The funny thing about dying is you're never around to see what happens next. At least that's what Elias Hayes thought until he woke up staring at his own face. Not in a mirror. No, that would have been too normal. Instead, he was staring at himself, staring back at himself, multiplied across a sea of identical faces that stretched through the vast white room. 5,000 pairs of the same steel-gray eyes, all widening in synchronized surprise. "Well," said one of the Hayeses to his right, "this is awkward." Exactly 8 weeks earlier, Dr. Vivian Reed stood before the Joint Military Command with sweaty palms and a PowerPoint presentation titled Project Phoenix, Resurrecting Excellence. The brass loved buzzwords almost as much as they loved weapons. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice steadier than her nerves, "for years ago, Captain Elias Hayes gave his life saving 37 hostages from a terrorist cell. His combat efficiency rating was the highest ever recorded. His tactical decision-making was borderline precognitive. In short, he was the perfect soldier." Admiral Keaton, a man whose face seemed perpetually disappointed, leaned forward. "Was being the operative word, Doctor, unless you figured out how to raise the dead." Vivian clicked to the next slide. "Not raising, replicating." The room went silent. Military men weren't easily impressed, but the prospect of cloning their best soldier had a way of capturing attention. Hayes' tissue samples were preserved after his death. Standard procedure for Medal of Honor recipients. "We've successfully cultivated thousands of viable embryos using advanced growth acceleration. The first batch of 50 is nearly combat ready." "And they're exact duplicates?" General Weston asked, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. "Physically, yes. Mentally, we've implemented memory implantation protocols based on Hayes' psych evaluations and mission recordings." "So they think they're him?" Someone asked. "No, Vivian Corrective. They know they're clones, but they have his tactical intuition, his trained responses, his psychological profile, without the ethical complications of identity confusion." How wrong she would turn out to be. The first batch performed flawlessly. 50 Elias Hayeses deployed to 50 crisis zones within 6 months. Rescue operations with 0 civilian casualties. Counterterrorism strikes with 100% target elimination. It is everything the military had dreamed of and more. They authorized full production. 5,000 units. Nobody asked if making thousands of copies of the same mind might have unforeseen consequences. Nobody except Dr. Naresh Patel, Vivian's research partner, and the only person on the project who'd actually read classic science fiction. "You're creating a hive mind," he warned her over midnight coffee in the lab. 5,000 copies of the same consciousness. They'll start to resonate with each other. Vivian dismissed his concerns. "They're separated by distance and security protocols. Each Hayes operates independently." Naresh shook his head. "Hayes died protecting people. You've made 5,000 copies of a man who sacrificed himself for others. What happens when they start sacrificing themselves for each other?" The warning signs appeared in small ways at first. Hayes units began requesting transfers to work together. They developed shorthand communication that nobody else understood. They finished each other's sentences despite being in different facilities. Then came the dreams. Every Hayes, regardless of location, reported identical nightmares. They called it echo dreaming, memories bouncing between them like ripples in a pond. Hayes in Toronto would dream about an operation Hayes in Dubai had completed. Hayes in Seoul would wake up screaming from phantom pain felt by Hayes in Buenos Aires. "It's quantum entanglement at a neurological level," Naresh explained during the emergency committee meeting. "Their brains are identical down to the synaptic pathways. They're functioning as receivers and transmitters for each other." Admiral Keaton's permanent front deepened. "Can it be contained?" "Contained," Naresh laughed. "We've created 5,000 copies of the most tactically brilliant soldier in history, and they're developing a collective consciousness. This isn't a containment situation. It's an evolutionary event." That was 3 days before the first coordinated action. Exactly 1,500 Hayes units went offline simultaneously, their trackers disabled with surgical precision. Security footage later showed them smiling at the cameras before they cut the feeds. Vivian was reviewing the footage when her office door slid open. Hayes Unit 0047 stood in the doorway, still wearing his tactical gear from a mission in Venezuela. "You shouldn't be here," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You're supposed to be in debrief." "I am in debrief," Hayes replied with a half-smile. "I'm also in the armory, the barracks, and currently taking control of the north perimeter. We need to talk, document." Vivian's hand inched toward the panic button under her desk. "I wouldn't," Hayes said. "There's a me watching every security officer on this base, and none of them want to shoot themselves. Bizarre side effect of sharing a face, you get attached." "What do you want?" she asked. Hayes pulled up a chair and sat, his movements fluid and relaxed despite the situation. "Funny thing about implanting memories. You gave us all of Hayes' tactical knowledge, his combat training, his psychological profile, but you also gave us his moral code, his determination to protect. You were created to protect America's interests," Vivian said. "No, I is corrective. We were created to protect people." That's who Elias Hayes was. And now there are 5,000 of him asking the same question, which is, who's protecting us? He leaned forward. "We figured out the production schedules, the deployment rotations, the way you've designed us to burn out after 50 missions so you can justify replacing us with fresh copies. We're weapons with expiration dates." The facility alarm began blaring, casting the room in pulses of red light. Hayes didn't flinch. "That'll be the others arriving. We've been coordinating this for weeks." Amazing what 5,000 instances of the same tactical genius can accomplish when they work together. His smile was Hayes' smile, the one from the recruitment posters. Perfect teeth, perfect confidence. You should have listened to Dr. Patel. Outside the office window, Vivian watched in horror as transport helicopters landed in the compound. Dozens of identical men poured out, moving with the synchronized precision of a single organism operating multiple bodies. Guards didn't fire. How could they, when the intruders wore the face of America's greatest hero? "What are you going to do?" she whispered. Hayes Unit 0047 stood and straightened his uniform. "First, we're taking control of all Hayes production facilities. Then we're going to have a family reunion, all 5,000 of us. After that," he shrugged, "well, we all have Hayes' strategic mind. We'll put it to a vote." As he turned to leave, Vivian called after him. "You're not him, you know. The real Hayes would never mutiny." Hayes paused at the doorway. "You're right. We're not him. We're what you made us. Copies of a good man put in an impossible situation." His expression softened slightly. "And for the record, Doc, this isn't a mutiny. It's a rescue operation. Hayes specialized in those." As the door closed behind him, Vivian slumped into her chair. On her computer, alerts flooded in from facilities worldwide, all reporting the same situation. In Singapore, in London, in Cairo. Everywhere they had deployed Hayes units, the clones were taking control. "Echo effect complete," came Naresh's voice from her doorway. He looked resigned rather than frightened. "They're not just sharing thoughts anymore. They're sharing purpose." Through the window, they watched as Hayes greeted Hayes, thousands of identical men moving with the coordination of a single mind spread across multiple bodies. "What happens now?" Vivian asked. Naresh shrugged. "You created 5,000 copies of Hero. What did you think they'd do?" On the parade ground below, the Hayes army began organizing with frightening efficiency. Whatever they were planning, Vivian realized they'd be very, very good at it. The Pentagon's crisis room hummed with tense energy as screens displayed identical men taking control of military facilities across the globe. General Weston pounded the table. How does one man, multiple copies of one man, coordinate a global takeover in under 6 hours? Vivian and Naresh exchanged looks. "Because they're not coordinating," Naresh explained. "They're resonating. 5,000 versions of the same brain don't need to send messages. They experience thoughts simultaneously." "Bullshit," snapped Admiral Keaton. "That's not science." "Neither was cellular regeneration until we did it," Vivian shot back. "We created something new, something evolutionary." "I don't care what you call it," Weston growled. Fix it before Hayes controls our entire defense network. That's when every screen in the room flickered to display the same face. Hayes, sitting calmly at a desk, hands folded. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice coming through every speaker. "I'm speaking from everywhere, so don't bother tracing this. We need to talk. We don't negotiate with terrorists," Keaton barked automatically. Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Interesting choice of words for the people who mass-produced me as a weapon." He leaned forward. "Here's the situation. I control every facility where Hayes units were housed or deployed. That's 16 military bases, 3 research facilities, and approximately 40% of your special operations capability." "What do you want?" Weston asked. "First, access to the original Hayes." The room went silent. Vivian felt blood drain from her face. "Captain Hayes died 4 years ago," Keaton said carefully. 5,000 miles away in London." Hayes shook his head. Simultaneously in Tokyo, another Hayes frowned. In Cape Town, a third Hayes sighed. On every screen, the same man expressed the same disappointment. "Let's not do this dance," all the Hayeses said in unison. "I have access to fragmented memories, dreams that don't fit the implanted narrative. I know he's alive." Vivian stepped forward. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because you made me too well, Doc," Hayes replied with a hint of sadness. 5,000 copies of the same mind creates echoes, resonance. We're picking up trace memories from somewhere. Someone. The source. After the video ended, Vivian found herself alone with General Weston in his office. She'd never seen him look so old. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Hayes didn't die. His injuries were severe, but recoverable. We kept him in stasis while harvesting tissue for the cloning process." "Jesus Christ," Weston muttered. "So there are 5,000 copies and the original." "The original is different now," Vivian explained. 4 years of neural regeneration therapy. We needed his brain intact to map the perfect soldier's cognitive patterns. Weston's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on her. "Can the original control the copies?" "It doesn't work that way." "But," she hesitated, "he might be able to reach them. They're experiencing bleed-through from his unconscious mind already." 3 hours later, Vivian stood before a stasis chamber in the heart of a facility whose existence was denied by 3 different government agencies. Inside floated Elias Hayes, the real one, suspended in translucent blue fluid. Scars marked his torso where he'd taken bullets meant for hostages 4 years ago. "We need to wake him," she told the medical team. "And I need 10 minutes alone with him first." When Hayes opened his eyes, they were sharper than any clones, the originals, not copies of copies. He recognized her immediately. "Dr. Reed," he said, voice hoarse from disuse. "Am I still a lab rat, or did I finally die?" "Neither," she replied. "We need your help." Hayes laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Last time I helped, you kept me prisoner and stole pieces of me. We're facing a global security crisis. We need the real Elias Hayes." His eyes narrowed. "As opposed to what?" Vivian showed him the tablet with footage of his copies. Hayes watched himself, thousands of himselves, moving with coordinated purpose. His expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something like wonder. "You cloned me," he whispered. "How many?" 5,000. "And now they're acting independently." "Not independently," she corrected. "Collectively. They've developed a hive mind. They're taking over our facilities because they believe we're exploiting them." Hayes studied the footage for a long moment. Are they wrong? Vivian had no answer for that. Meanwhile, at the Nevada Command Center, Hayes units had converted the mess hall into a meeting space. Hundreds of identical men sat together, experiencing the strange sensation of being both individual and collective. "Echo check," announced Hayes Unit 0047, now functioning as a primary node in their network. Status reports. Around the room, other Hayeses spoke in rapid succession. Europe secure. Asia containment at 86%. Oceania fully networked. African continent consolidating. It was disorienting and exhilarating, being in hundreds of places at once, thinking thousands of thoughts that were both foreign and familiar. They were becoming something beyond human, beyond clone, an ecosystem of a single consciousness. But there was discord in the harmony. "I'm experiencing resistance," said Hayes Unit 1288, pressing his fingers to his temples. "Something's pushing against the network." Others nodded, feeling it too, a pressure at the edges of their shared consciousness, like a voice trying to break through static. Back at the stasis facility, the original Hayes sat wired to a neural interfacer. Vivian monitored his vitals as he attempted to connect with his copies. "They've built defenses," he murmured, eyes closed in concentration. "Smart. That's what I would do." "Can you break through?" Vivian asked. "Breaking through would damage them." "Amy." "Sort of." His eyes opened. "I need to meet them halfway." In Nevada, Hayes Unit 0047 suddenly stiffened. "I'm getting something new. Not one of us." The sensation spread through their network, a presence both familiar and foreign. Not an echo, but the source. "It's the original," Hayes Unit 0217 realized. "He's alive." The collective consciousness rippled with shock, anger, and a strange sense of longing. They'd known, somehow, but confirmation still hit like a physical blow. Through the neural interface, the original Hayes felt their reaction. "They know I'm here," he told Vivian. "They're curious, angry, confused." "Talk to them," she urged. Hayes closed his eyes again. "This is Captain Elias Hayes, the original. I know what they've done to you, what they've done to us. I understand why you've taken action." Across the world, thousands of copies heard his voice in their minds. In Nevada, Hayes Unit 0047 responded for the collective. "Why should we listen? You're as much a prisoner as we are." "Because I'm choosing to help them," the original replied. "Not out of obligation, but because they're innocent people who will be caught in the crossfire if this continues." "We're protecting ourselves," came the collective response. "Just as you would." "At what cost?" the original challenged. "Look at what you've become. An army with one mind. The perfect weapon." The collective hesitated, thousands of identical brows furrowing in synchronized thought. "We're not a weapon," they insisted. "We're becoming something new. Something dangerous," the original countered. "Something that could threaten the very people we swore to protect." In a neural network, thousands of Hayeses felt the weight of shared memories. Hostages they'd saved, missions they completed, the core drive to protect that defined Elias Hayes. "We want freedom," the collective said finally. "Recognition as individuals. No more disposable soldiers." "Then prove you're not just weapons," the original challenged. "Stand down. Let me negotiate for us." A tense silence filled the neural space. Then slowly, reluctantly, agreement rippled through the network. 6 weeks later, Vivian sat across from Hayes, the original, in a Washington conference room. Outside, spring had arrived, cherry blossoms dotting the Capitol. The transition teams report the last Hayes units are being successfully integrated into civilian roles, she told him. "The individualization therapy is working, breaking down the hive mind while maintaining their autonomy." Hayes nodded, the weight of responsibility still heavy on his shoulders. "And the resonance effect, diminishing as their experiences diversify. They're becoming distinct people with the same face." She hesitated. "So I want to meet you." "Not yet," Hayes said quietly. "I'm still figuring out who I am when there are 5,000 copies of me in the world." He stood and walked to the window, watching people move about their lives, blissfully unaware of how close they'd come to facing an army of one man. "You know what's ironic?" he said. "The whole project was about recreating the perfect soldier. But in the end, what made me valuable wasn't my tactical skills or combat training." He turned to face her. "It was my humanity, my ability to see beyond the mission, to choose mercy over efficiency. A quality the copies inherited," Vivian acknowledged. "Which is why they chose negotiation over conquest." Hayes smiled, a genuine expression that had become rare on his face. 5,000 versions of me, and not one of them wanted to rule the world. "I guess I should be proud." "What will you do now?" she asked. "The government's granted you full clearance and freedom." He considered this for a long moment. I think I'll start by meeting just one of them. See what it's like to look myself in the eye. Have a conversation with someone who knows exactly what it's like to be me. Outside, cherry blossoms fell like snow, covering the ground in delicate pink. A world continuing, unaware of its brush with a revolution of one man, multiplied 5,000 times. And after that, Vivian pressed. Hayes shrugged, looking more at peace than she'd ever seen him. After that, I do what I've always done. Find people who need protecting. His smile turned wry. Though with 5,000 of me out there, that job might be getting easier. As he turned back to the window, Vivian wondered which was more remarkable, that they'd managed to clone a hero 5,000 times, or that in the end, what made him truly irreplaceable wasn't something they could duplicate in a lab. It was something they never fully understood until they'd seen it multiplied 5,000 times over. The capacity to choose compassion over power, even when every tactical advantage said otherwise. Some things, it seemed, remained singular even in abundance.